My name is Tina Baldwin, and I live at 1372 4 Mile Road in Palouse. No, we'll try Viola and get the state right. I don't know if anybody else from here is out of Moscow, but I came to this meeting because I don't have a town per se, but I consider Moscow my town, so I came. I came intending to be here about 7 o'clock. I came down from my house, which is about 3.5 miles from the 95. It was snowing up there. I came down, hit 95, and I came up 95 on the north side of Steakhouse Hill, and it was white out, and the 60 mile an hour that is allowed was reduced to 35. It was very, very foggy. Came over the hill, and it was not quite so foggy. I would say halfway up from the Lewis turnoff, it dissipated. And from down here, you folks in Moscow might think that the rest of the county is experiencing these light snow showers. The reason I bring this up is that the E2 road is about the same altitude as my house and as most of top of Steakhouse Hill. A lot has been made of the safety on comparison between C3 and E2. I have sent you all a letter, and so you can read it at some time in the near future. And I give you other points which address this issue of safety. E2 is not the safer route, and just getting here, I hope, if altitude and experience is worth anything, that you will consider C3 as preferable, and I'll leave the other reasons for safety aside.
Thank you, Ms. Baldwin. Walter?
Ms. Baldwin, did you say that Steakhouse Hill is the same elevation as E2?
It is my understanding that they're about the same altitude, that the E2 will pass up as high as 3,000 feet.
ITD's information in an email to me from January 30 indicated that Steakhouse Hill is 70 feet higher than E2's highest elevation.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
I don't know if it's wonderful or not. It's just the information I've got.
But it goes to dispel what has been said, that the weather will not be a significant factor on this road, that it will
I'm not sure about the impact on the weather. I'm just saying the elevations are not as you'd indicated, according to ITD.
Well, I think, at least I hope I intended, what I wanted to say is they're about equal, that 70 feet even supports my point further.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else care to speak? Please.
David Hall, 1334 Wallen Road, Moscow. The city got good input from the commissions and staff, and as noted, the numbers that ITD used to justify or tried to justify their preferred alternative are contradictory and in dispute, and there are many errors in the draft EIS. A number of them are pointed out in the commission and staff notes on specific issues and so forth, and there are others. E2 arguably is not the safest, and it's environmentally very poor. I would urge you to listen to the suggestions of the commissioners and the staff and oppose E2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tim Hatton. I live in Moscow at 1119 Lynandra Drive. I'm here today to represent the Palouse Prairie Foundation, and David Hall is here as an individual, but he's also on the board of the Palouse Prairie Foundation. We sent you a letter, but it came in quite late, and we apologize for that. So we passed around a hard copy. The main thing we wanted to state here tonight is just to if you don't know, the Palouse Prairie Foundation is a nonprofit organization that was came into being about 10 years ago with the mission of conserving and restoring what little Palouse Prairie is left. Why do we care about it? Well, we care about it because this prairie once covered hundreds of thousands of acres in this area, and the with development over the years and agriculture in this grassland, it's mostly been reduced to, estimates range anywhere from 4% down to less than 0.1% of prairie remaining. So there's not much of this ecosystem left. A number of scientists have, in their inventories and estimations, feel that it warrants a status of endangered ecosystem. There's so little of it left. So the mission of the Palouse Prairie Foundation is to try and conserve what's left and where feasible, restore some prairie, because we feel there's certainly room for some restoration of this endangered ecosystem. And we just wanted to say that we are, the board feels it's important actually to not take a position, a specific position on one of these alternatives, because our mission doesn't really extend to a number of the issues that are that are posed by these alternatives. So we leave that up to our members and others. But we can say that we are unanimous, our board is unanimous in its opposition to the preferred, ITD's preferred alternative, E2. And I do say ITD's preferred alternative because I don't think it's a lot of people's preferred alternative. And the reason is because it runs higher up on the ridge than C3 or W4, and that puts it in much closer proximity to the largest and best pieces of Palouse Prairie left in Latah County and arguably in the world. And if you get into this DEIS and if you get into the technical reports specifically and into the vegetation technical reports, especially the vegetation technical report by Doctors Lass and Prather from the University of Idaho, commissioned to do this report, they show pretty clearly that these alternatives are going to bring a lot of new weeds into the area. And each one of these alternatives is going to do the same thing. Essentially, vehicular traffic will bring weeds in on this corridor, and the construction process will create an environment that's perfect for weeds. I mean, roadsides are weed habitats, and they migrate out from those weeds. So although the issue is the same for all three of these alternatives, what we're concerned about, again, is the fact that E2 is so much further up on the ridge that the weed infestation zone, as specified by Doctors Lass and Prather, is going to engulf the entire ridge. It's going to engulf all of Paradise Ridge, where the best remaining Palouse Prairie is. And if you get into those technical reports, it's very, very clear. You'll see that their weed infestation zone is 1 kilometer on each side of the routes, 1 kilometer. So they put the maps in, they show W4, they show C3, and they show E2 in that zone of influence. And E2 is just, it's damning and it's scary. We're going to have a lot of new weeds coming in on this highway, and they are going to be hitting the prairie hard. And if there's such a thing as a death by 1,000 cuts, this is probably going to be about 500. It's not going to take the prairie out immediately, but over the long term, this is going to be, it's going to be very hard on this native ecosystem. So we're opposed to it on the grounds of these indirect effects. There's just, we give in our letter that we sent to you, we list out 16 other points. I'm not going to read them all here, but just on why we're opposed to E2. And the interesting thing is if you look at that DEIS and you look at the recommendations and comments by the major agencies and organizations that have anything to do with land resource planning or environmental protection, from the U.S. EPA to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to the state fish and game agencies, they're all opposed to E2. They say flat out, it's the worst and wrong choice for the environment. So we feel we're it's not just us that have problems with this. It is almost every organization whose mission is to conserve or protect the environment. And so we urge you to take a stand against E2. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for Palouse Prairie. That's all.
Thank you. Looks like we have a question for you.
Okay,
Willing
yes.
Fielding?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name's Tim Hatton.
Mr. Haddon,
Yes.
I read somewhere, maybe a letter to the editor or someplace or other, that, and I could be wrong, but the owner of that property you're talking about,
There's a number of properties up there.
well, you said this large piece.
There's a large piece running down the
Okay.
ridge itself, and that's split between several owners.
Okay, well, maybe
Yeah.
maybe this makes no sense at all. I read that some owner that owned some piece of the original Palouse Prairie was willing to sell it.
Oh.
Would y'all be, would your ownership of it help protect it, regardless of a road? I mean, I've
Possibly.
I have lived facing Paradise Ridge with my front door for 20 years.
Yeah.
And when I first moved out there, make up a number, there were half dozen lights at night.
Yeah.
Now I can almost read a newspaper from what's coming off of Paradise Hill with all the development. I just wondered if it were available to you to acquire it, would ownership of it help protect it?
It certainly could, and I think the organization probably that would be, that's in a position potentially to pick up property like that would be the Palouse Land Trust. But I can tell you that the Palouse Prairie Foundation right now is picking up a couple of properties in Whitman County, old cemeteries actually, that have Palouse Prairie on them because no one else would take them, so we're picking them up.
Thank you.
And with respect to the issue of houses up on the ridge, I know there's been a lot of comments. It's like the ridge is already, we've got all these houses up here now, so let's not pretend this is a pristine ecosystem up here, et cetera. We're the first to admit that it's not a pristine ecosystem up there. It is being chipped away day after day after day. But that certainly doesn't mean let's go ahead and give this E2 a carte blanche simply because there's some people living up there.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Hatton, could
Yes,
you state your address again? I'm sorry, we didn't pick that
Oh,
up.
yeah, it's 1119 Lynandra Drive. That's Lynandra.
Thank you, that's what threw us.
You bet, yeah, it's a tricky one.
I think I had a skunk in your garage.
Yeah, we did. You're the
There you
man.
go.
Okay, that's
Wow.
right. Yeah, you came out at like 5 in the morning.
That's right.
It was horrible.
It was horrible.
That's right.
Your fire department at work.
Yes, it
eh?
was a
All
fire
right.
call.
We thought it was an electrical fire.
Didn't know
so
what it was.
horrible.
It was awful.
Where's the skunk now?
He was gone,
Yeah.
but he permeated the whole house.
That may be the one they caught at my house the other day.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Others who'd like to speak to this?
So I'm Helen Yost. I live here in Moscow. And I might end up repeating, but summarizing some of the things that have already been said. I come before you as a citizen of Moscow, but also, of the greater ecosystem that we inhabit, and am a board member of the Paradise Ridge Defense Coalition, and I also speak for many members of Wild Idaho Rising Tide. Our concerns are, as someone has stated before, that the preferred alternative, the eastern E2 alternative, would be higher, so it'd be more impacted by weather. That seems a given, especially on a northwest facing slope that would get more wind at higher elevations. I had a harrowing experience driving back across the Palouse one night when the ice fog was so thick that the windshield wipers couldn't keep up with it. And when we dropped down into Colfax, no ice fog. So based on that, what I've heard from a lot of the landowners up on Paradise Ridge, who I think are being wrongfully blamed for, too much development on the ridge, when I know a lot of those people look well after their properties. Based on their impressions of weather and wildlife, I would say there's definitely going to be a problem if E2 goes up on the ridge. And of course, the weather study used to gauge the differences in weather between all three alternatives is seriously flawed. It occurred only during 5 months of the warmest and driest year in 25 years. And the points that were used to collect data were not representative of where these various alternatives would go. There's higher costs for mitigation of wildlife damages, and that's just not loss of habitat, which there would be an extensive loss of habitat, but also clearing areas up to 330 feet on both sides of the road. That's some more, potentially restored native Palouse prairie habitat that were taken out. There's the possibility for more collisions besides the impacts of snow and ice and fog on drivers on the road. Like Tim said extensively, weeds could move right into this very last large core of native Palouse prairie on the top of Paradise Ridge. Anyone that knows anything about biological diversity knows that you have to maintain the integrity of those large core units to still have even a fragment of the ecosystem that functions as it should. And edge effects are brutal to those dynamics. And of course, there'll be more noise and lights. That's some of the main impacts on the folks here in Moscow. Those impacts to the aesthetics that we draw from the ridge. We live in Moscow for reasons, many of us, of just quality of life. We don't want to have poor air quality. We don't want to be impacted by noise. We want to know there's a good natural environment right outside our door that we can enjoy. Paradise Ridge is hiked by tons of folks here in Moscow that want to know that place is there as a pressure valve and a way to reconnect with the natural world. And then there's social justice issues. A lot of folks, and this was quoted by one of the commissions, of low income status being displaced. An entire trailer court and a house would be displaced, and this was wrongly quoted in the draft environmental impact statement along Ide Road. And the 8 businesses that supposedly would be displaced by the central alternative, which we prefer because for various reasons I'll get at, aren't going to be displaced. They're just going to be encroached upon by the road getting wider. So that's a definite issue, both the misrepresentation as well as how many lives would be impacted by this. Of course, many already have by the unsafe conditions on the road. So I do want to assert that we are just as concerned about safety as every other citizen. We just want to make sure that the job is done right. And according to federal regulations, when you change a highway in any way, you have to maximize the existing right-of-way and infrastructure. You have to minimize the environmental damage. And we don't believe that the E2 alternative is going to do either of those, but that the C3 alternative would. The major issue, of course, is abandonment of the present route if E2 is built as a county road that wouldn't be brought up to federal standards, which would still be unsafe, especially for the people that have to use the old road for their businesses or residences. And then I guess, in closing, I would reiterate that major agencies at the state and federal level are opposed to the E2 alternative and do prefer the C3 alternative. And because these folks have committed their lives to understanding some of the dynamics that go around major public construction, that it'd be great to defer to their opinions in this particular case. And lastly, I guess we're just concerned that that area would be overdeveloped eventually. I think we live here so that we can enjoy the qualities of this place, and we don't all want to look up at Paradise Ridge and see, gas stations. And, if you look at some of the property records for the county, subdivisions and perhaps multifamily housing popping up on the ridge, there is that strong possibility, despite the fact that it is supposed to be a limited access highway. So we encourage you, if nothing else, to perhaps not take a stand on any of the alternatives. But if you do feel that you must, that again, you weigh in on the side of long-term sound scientific deliberation and choose the C3 alternative as the city's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Others who'd like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing no, yes, oh, well, Tina, now you had spoken, you have some. Oh, about the elevation question? Yes, I thought you were saying. Oh, okay, sure, come on up here. That's it.
I thought you were saying that Steakhouse Hill was 70 feet higher. Wait, what? Tell me what.
I'm not to argue about the elevation. I had the same question that you apparently had about the elevations. And I inquired of ITD the elevation of everything from Marsh Hill up at the Benoit County line all the way down to Genesee. And the number I read a moment ago was a first email that was immediately corrected by ITD. Moscow Mountain Steakhouse Hill at the highway is 3080 and E2 is 2980. So it's 100 feet difference. Now, whether that means more snow, less snow, more fog, less fog, more black ice, I have no idea.
I was just commenting on tonight, that tonight, starting way down towards the foot of Steakhouse Hill, it was a whiteout with a cloud, and we slowed down to 35, isn't that correct? And that continued until about halfway over.
If you're going over Steakhouse anytime other than a summer day, you pay attention.
Yeah, and therefore, to say it's safer to go E2 is not true, because they're going to raise the speed limit to 60 miles an hour, and there's more crashes according to I need my letter, but the point is, the faster you go, the worse crashes you have. Another issue that was raised is the number of entrances onto the highway. If you go over Steakhouse Hill, and I went back and forth 3 times to count these, there are 21 to 27 entrances in a space of about 3.5 miles, depending on whether you want to count how you want to count the farm entrances. That's a lot of entrances just over Steakhouse Hill. It's my understanding, since this is going to that section of the road met federal standards, that that was okay in that section. They're going to make these roads, E2 and C3, also meet these safety standards. And to say that there's too many entrances and that will cause an increase of accidents, I don't think is consistent with what they have done for the rest of their improvements on the highway and for us, just Latah County. But if you go all the way up, and I've been going every week now for a long time, to Coeur Lane, it's the same story, where they've made a double wide road separated. You have the same number of access points that you had before the road, except around where they put the bypass of the casino. I mean, houses just pull out on the road, but you get these longer entrances to the to the road in some places, so you can pull out of the traffic lane, slow down and off, and you're not interfering with the traffic. Or you can pull onto the road going in the same direction as the traffic, build up your speed so that by the time you meld. So I think these are important things that could be done if cross-traffic is truly an issue. If that's going to be made an issue.
Thank you, Tina.